Good day, mates. My name is Mordecai, and welcome back to the show, where an aspiring roleplayer narrates various RPG-related stories as a learning tool. I am speaking through my familiar Aquata for this narration. One of the most important aspects to tabletop roleplaying is the ability to separate yourself from your character. There are a wide variety of reasons why this skill is rather important at the table, from being able to prevent out-of-game knowledge from affecting in-character decisions, to being able to have an out-of-game joke with your fellow party members. Being able to separate the character from the player is a good utility. However, sometimes you run into situations where a player at the table doesn't seem to grasp the importance of keeping this separation, and it is entirely possible that this lack of separation can result in unfavourable situations. To be clear, separating your character from yourself does not mean that you shouldn't form an attachment to the character, but it does mean that you can have an out-of-character discussion and not have said interaction affect the game. So how does the lack of separation cause a bad time at the table in today's story? Let's find out as we embark on another delve. Before we begin with today's story, if you like my content and want to see more, feel free to subscribe and like the video. It's free to do, and every bit of support is highly appreciated. Plus, you can always change your mind at a later date. Let's delve into the often terrifying world of r/RPG horror stories. Today's narrative is titled, Edgy Player Marked Me for Chuckling at His Character, and is written by user GlitteringNewt5798. This story revolves around a campaign that I joined that unfortunately ended a week ago. It's a tale that ended up in dust, all due to me laughing at an edgy player's character, and that seemed to really hurt him. A number of weeks ago, I was trying to find a campaign to join, when I tried to ask my Discord friends who played Dungeons & Dragons if they had any groups I could join, and fortunately, one of them did find a group that needed just one more player, so I messaged the DM and with his approval was able to join their group. Now, the group consisted of 5 other players. There's an Aasimar Paladin, a Dwarf Cleric, a Half-Elf Ranger, a Tiefling Warlock, and an Elf Rogue. The Dungeon Master tells me that the plot revolves around an infamous family that uses demonic powers with malicious intent, and a group of adventurers that have some antonym or personal grudges with said family. They were all to be gathered together by an unknown benefactor. I spent a night exchanging files with the Dungeon Master and reading through the central plot hook, before I finally made my decision to have a human fighter. The day comes when the group starts the campaign, which started with all of us meeting in a tavern, gathered on the same room by a note, and we all introduced our characters in various ways. Some were bland, others were creative, but the rogue, oh the rogue, he introduces his character rather childishly edgily. He makes this deep tone voice and starts describing in detail how edgy and cool his elf rogue looks. And I still remember one of the lines. With hair white as snow, scars that can be seen on his face, and a tattoo glowing on his arms, he carries a pair of swords that still has remains of his former foes. He raises his head and looks at everyone inside, judging them with his red, vengeful gaze, before silently sitting down in the corner of the room. I'm not going to lie, I found this introduction kind of funny, as I accidentally let out a light chuckle whilst he was making his introduction. But I genuinely had no idea that this chuckle may have actually hurt his feelings, and thus may have caused the chain of events that affected me. Everyone made their own introduction, and the adventure began with the benefactor telling us to go to a village that has some information about the family. On the way there, we introduced ourselves to each other, with the exception of the rogue, who kept having his character stare at mine, Like, he just did nothing but staring daggers at my fighter during the entirety of the roleplay, ignoring everyone else, even when they were actively trying to talk to him. The first instance of combat ensues when we arrived at the village, and found it to be currently under siege by imps that are under the direct control of the family. While in the middle of the combat, the rogue suddenly swings his sword towards me and the imp in front of me with 1 hit point left, dealing some damage to me, and at the same time killing the imp that I was intending to kill on my next turn. After the combat, the cleric healed my character, and in character I asked the rogue why he suddenly attacked me and stole my kill, to which the rogue would just say, "He looks at you with his red, vengeful eyes, makes a smug look, and turns away." Which kind of upsets me, but I just let that go. For several times afterwards, my interaction with the rogue is basically just the rogue staring at me, and he keeping on trying to get in my way during combat. And even the party was starting to get annoyed and starting to question the rogue about all of this. But of course, the rogue just turned away and ignored them. During the roleplay sessions, the Dungeon Master revealed that my fighter was one of the former servants of the big bad evil guy, that was in the process of being reformed and trying to redeem herself by killing her former master. This was a plot twist that both me and the Dungeon Master had planned firsthand, and whilst the party were all shocked by this, the rogue immediately tried to kill my character, but was thankfully pulled away by the party. The rogue suddenly goes into a monologue without warning about how his whole tribe got killed by the big bad evil guy, and he remembers all of the faces that participated in that massacre. According to the rogue, my fighter was there, taking part in the massacre. After that, he dyed his hair white, forged a pair of swords that carved every single member within the big bad evil guy's family, and swore an oath to bring vengeance. Now, when looking back, this feels awfully familiar for some reason. After this, the rogue's actions turn a great deal more hostile, from staring daggers at me to trying to actively assassinate my fighter when she let her guard down. I guess that plot twist just gave him more reason to try to kill my character, but luckily he kept failing his stealth check all the time when he tried to do that, and ended up getting caught right away. In the last session, the party arrived at a small town that was close to our next destination, so we decided to stay there to take a rest. Everybody takes a tour around the town. I was trying to find a relative of my character who happened to live in this town, but the rogue had other plans. He started travelling around the town, spreading rumours of me trying to help the big bad evil guy by trying to poison the water supply for the town. He was able to make several successful deception checks, and the whole town suddenly turned hostile towards me. They were able to immediately capture my character, and were trying to pin her to the ground, whilst the party, with the exception of the rogue, was trying to pull them away. But the capture was halted by the mayor, who turns out was my character's relative that she has been searching for. He asks the townsfolk to bring forth evidence that my character has indeed been helping the big bad evil guy, and if they find my character guilty. And the rogue, who seemed so desperate to try and kill my character, was asked for another deception check. With a natural 1 on his dice, he failed to deceive the mayor, and was having his lies exposed instead. Maybe it was due to frustration, but the rogue suddenly told the Dungeon Master that he wants to throw his dagger at the mayor. The Dungeon Master said no, because killing the mayor would make the entire town turn against the rogue. The rogue insisted, however, his central reason being, "He doesn't get fooled by deception, he is worthless, let me kill him, and that fighter too." And from his voice, it genuinely sounded like he was trying to intimidate the Dungeon Master. But the Dungeon Master didn't back down. and stuck by his original decision. No. And that was when the rogue returned to his deeper tone and told the DM, "I'm not reading that out loud. Ugh." And then turned around to tell me that I had hurt his feelings because I was laughing at his character, saying how I don't even appreciate how cool his character's introduction was, and was laughing at it. And he kept asking me, and he was practically yelling at this point, what was so funny about it? I just turned around and told him that I thought his character's introduction was interesting and kind of entertaining, so I chuckled a bit. But he just kept thinking that I was making excuses, and after several minutes of calling me names, he disconnected, and then proceeded to block everyone in the group afterwards. After the rogue left, we tried to continue the campaign, but it was very quickly ended as we all started getting busy with our own things. Although some of us still chat to this day, it seems like the Dungeon Master doesn't have any plans to have any new campaigns soon, which is a shame. Although the others didn't seem to mind the sudden drama, I kinda felt like I was at fault for making that chuckle. In summary, an edgy player heard me chuckle at his character, mocking me and desperately trying to hurt or otherwise kill my character, and when the Dungeon Master finally told him no, he just flipped out on the Dungeon Master and me, and left. And that's where the story ends. So, I can get why the Edgelord's introduction to the party can easily be seen as being at least a bit funny. And having a slight chuckle at the stereotype is fairly admissible, provided that you let the Edgelord know right away that you were poking fun at the stereotype that his character falls under. The main consideration being that the chuckle could have been explained sooner, and an effort could have been made to ensure that no permanent harm was done. However, even with all of that said and considered, the small chuckle is still no justification for what the Edgelord proceeded to do over the course of their continued involvement in the campaign. Not even by a long shot. This is a bit of a demonstration, and indeed a reminder, on how important it is to have the ability to separate yourself from your character, since the out-of-character humour was falsely interpreted by the rogue as being an in-character jab, and thus the resulting in repeated attempts by the Edgelord to try and kill the poster's character, even going so far as to target relatives, changing his backstory to have a paper-thin in-character justification, and attempting to rally an entire town to engage in a witch hunt against the character. If that sounds like a complete overreaction, it does. Which is the main reason I commend the Dungeon Master for intervening. And I also sincerely hope that the group Sunday establishes a new campaign to play with each other. What I take away from this story is a reminder of the importance of character separation, and an appreciation for out-of-game humour at the table. But just as important is the concept that there is a right time and place for said humour, and that proper communication to clarify misconceptions is a good way to determine if the other player is a good fit for the table. But also, if you are going to play as an Edgelord, it would be a good idea to clear it with the Dungeon Master and the party before engaging in play. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed my content and would like to see more, feel free to subscribe and give the video a like. It's free to do, and every bit of support is highly appreciated. Plus, you can always change your mind at a later date. Thank you again for watching, and I shall see you all next time.